Hi everyone, welcome to Human Anatomy and Physiology. Today we will discuss about muscular system, and we will start with the muscle tissue. As we already discussed before, that there are three types of muscle tissue. The first one is skeletal muscle, and this skeletal muscle primarily attached to the bone, and this is the one that contract and move the skeleton. It is striated or striped, and it is voluntary. The second type is cardiac muscle tissue, and it is located on the wall of the heart. It is also stripes and involuntary. This means that we cannot really control the contraction of this cardiac muscle. It will contract automatically. And the last type of muscle tissue is the smooth muscle. And the name is telling you it is not striped, so it is smooth, and it is involuntary. They are usually located on the wall of the hollow visceral organs, like the GI tract, respiratory tract, urinary tract. They're also located on some places, like in the skin. There is a smooth muscle called the arrector pili. On the eyes, we also have smooth muscle called the iris, and the intrinsic muscle, and also sphincter smooth muscle. So we're going to compare these three different types of muscle tissue. Again, the skeletal muscle, it is long cylindrical muscle. Okay, it's long cylindrical muscle. It has stripe. Okay, because it is long, then each cell will have more than one nucleus. There are many nucleus in one cell. Again, they are attached on the skeleton. The function is to produce body movement, stabilize the body position, and also increase body heat during shivering. And mostly the movement or the contraction is voluntary. This means that we can really control this skeletal muscle movement. So we can really move our hand, our legs, including the tongue. So the tongue is also skeletal muscle because we are able to move this muscle voluntarily. The second type is cardiac muscle. It is branching muscle. Yeah. It also has stripe. It is shorter compared to the skeletal muscle. Therefore, it only has one nucleus per cell. It has more mitochondria compared to the skeletal muscle. I think it is because the cardiac muscle never stop contraction, so they really need ATP for this contraction. Therefore, it has more mitochondria. Location is on the wall of the heart, and the main function is to pump the blood, so regulate organ volume. In this case, is the heart volume. The contraction is involuntary, so we cannot really control this contraction. It will contract by itself automatically. The last one is smooth muscle, and this is the only one that look like spindle. Yeah, so this is a spindle muscle, shorter compared to the skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle. Therefore, it only have one nucleus per cell. We don't see stripe in this muscle. Okay, so this is why it's called a smooth muscle, no stripe. Okay. They are usually located on the wall of the hollow organs, like GI tract organ, esophagus, stomach, intestine, respiratory tract, the trachea, bronchus, bronchioles, urinary tract, okay, like ureter, urinary bladder, urethra. They are also located on the eyes, like in the iris. Okay, iris is the smooth muscle that control the opening of the pupil. The pupil is the holes on our eyes that let the light enter into our eyes. So it's controlled by iris. There is also intrinsic ciliary muscle. This is the one that control the lens accommodation. So when we see object in focus, this is because of this intrinsic muscle control the accommodations of the lens. And there is also arrector pili muscle. It is located on the skin. It is the one that actually causing the hair on the skin become erected, especially when, for example, when we see a scary movie, then there is a goosebump. It is because of this arrector pili. And there is also sphincter muscle, usually at the end of the tract. And the main function is, of course, for the one that's located in the hollow organ, will be used for regulate organ volume, and also movement of substances within the tract. It is involuntary. It means that you cannot really control this smooth muscle. Okay, this is the properties of muscle tissue. So every muscle tissue will have this property. The first one is excitability. So excited, it means that the muscle able to respond the chemical stimulus that coming from the neurons, okay, which is called the neurotransmitter. So the muscle will respond to the neurotransmitter that is released by our nervous system, our neuron. Conductivity is mean that each muscle cell able to propagate electrical signal within the membrane. So there is a conduction inside the muscle itself. And of course, contractility. This is the main function over here, which is the muscle able to contract. Contracts mean actually to be shorter. So shorten, and then it will generate the force, whether pumping the blood or moving things with our hand, kicking with our leg, for example. It is actually the function of the contraction. And extensibility, ability to stretch without damaging the tissue. So the muscle also stretching, which is become longer. And elasticity, ability to return to the original shape after being stretched. So it has this elasticity. So these are the 5 properties of muscle tissue. Now we start with muscle tissue number 1, which is the skeletal muscle tissue. So if we see, if we have meat, that meat is actually muscle. So that meat is actually consists of many fascicles. So this is one fascicle. This is another fascicle. This is another fascicle. Inside the fascicle, there are a lot of muscle cells. So one over here, I'm going to use different color. So this one is muscle cell, muscle cell, muscle cell. So consists of this fascicle consists of many muscle cell or myofiber. So if we take one of this fascicle over here, then there will be one muscle cell over here. So this is If we take one muscle cell, this is long muscle cell, usually skeletal muscle is very long. Then what is present in the muscle cell, its muscle cell, there is a fibrils, okay, which is filament. It's called the myofibril. Okay, and each myofibril consists of filament. It's called the myofilament. So basically, this muscle tissue is just like a cable that has a lot of cable inside it, and there is a lot of metals filaments inside the cable. Right? So the myofilament that is really important for muscle contraction is called the actin and myosin. So these are the two filaments that important for muscle contraction. Now, if we look at one individual muscle cell, so a muscle cell, sometimes it is also known as myofiber, sometimes it is also known as myocyte. Okay, remember, cyte means cell, myo means muscle. So myocyte, myofiber, muscle cell, it is the same name. Why it is called the myofiber? Because it is long fiber that's covered by sarcolemma. Now, you see, the name of the plasma membranes of muscle cell, it has special name. It's called the sarcolemma. Regular cell is called the cell membrane. Okay. And this sarcolemma is actually two or double layer that will make tube. And this tube is going down into the cytoplasm. This look like T, okay, like T letter. So therefore, it's called the T tubule. Okay, the cytoplasm of the muscle cell also has special name. It's called the sarcoplasm. It's not cytoplasm, but it is sarcoplasm. That consists of many myofibrils, which is the myosin, the actin. There are also myoglobin. This is oxygen binding protein. So the oxygen will also carried by this myoglobin inside the muscle cell. Of course, nucleus, if it is skeletal muscle, it will be more than one nucleus. Mitochondria, this is special reticulum in the muscle cell. It's called the sarcoplasmic reticulum, or SR. And the primary function of this SR is for calcium storage inside the muscle cell. Okay, so SR function is calcium storage. And there is also glycogen. This is actually glucose, okay, or sugar storage inside the muscle cell. So it has its own protein that carry oxygen, is called the myoglobin. It has its own special reticulum that used for calcium storage, is called the SR, and it has its own glucose or sugar storage, is called the glycogen. So this is special for the muscle cell. Each myofibril consists of many contractile units. This is really important. So the unit of contraction of muscle tissue or muscle cell is called the sarcomere. So this is the unit that really perform contraction. There are millions of sarcomeres in one muscle cell. So when these millions of sarcomere contracts together, then the whole muscle cell will be contracted. So this is sarcomere over here. So this is one sarcomere over here. So it is bordered by Z-like structure. Okay, so it's called the Z disc. So this is one sarcomere. and it has the thick filament. Is thicker, is called the myosin, and it has thinner filament over here, is called the actin. So this is one sarcomere. This is another sarcomere over here. Will be another sarcomere. So this is a long fiber that consists of many sarcomeres. This is how the muscle cell look like. Okay, so again, if it is one muscle cell over here, okay, so it has membrane, is called the sarcolemma. Okay, remember the name of the membrane is special for muscle cell. Okay, sarcolemma. Okay, and then the inside, it is called the sarcoplasma. Okay, so it has many nucleus. This is one nucleus. So this is skeletal muscle. It has many nucleus per cell. It has special structure that used for storage of calcium. It's called the SR, okay, sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay. And then it has special protein that carry oxygen. It's called the myoglobin. Okay, it has special storage for glucose. It's called the glycogen. Okay, of course, it has organelle that produce the ATP, the mitochondria. Okay, if you see the sarcoplasma, it has double membrane. In one place, that double membrane go inside to the sarcoplasma and creating this T letter. So this is what we call the T tubules. Okay, and of course there is a fiber, a long fiber. Its boundary over here is from this Z structure to another Z structure. This is one unit. It's called the sarcomere. Okay, and this is another unit of sarcomere. This is from Z to Z. This is another sarcomere. This is another sarcomere. Okay, sarcomere. Okay, and then if you see the sarcomere, it has the thick, so the thick filament that attach to the middle protein over here. That thick filament is called myosin. Okay? And then you also see the thin filament, which is this one over here, that attaches to the Z disc, okay, to the border. Okay, so this thin filament is called actin. Okay, so these are the two main filaments of the sarcomere that's used for contraction. We will see the process later. Okay, so just remember actin and myosin is the filaments in the sarcomere that used for muscle contraction. Now, how it look like the sarcomere? Again, it is bordered by the Z disc. Okay, it's called the Z disc because it looks like Z letter. Okay, and in the middle there is a M-line protein, and this M-line protein anchor the thick filament, which is the myosin, and the Z disc anchor the thin filament, which is the actin. Okay, so this is one sarcomere. And then if we make it bigger, that it's sarcomere, then you will see the M-line protein is here in the middle. Okay, so this one, the M-line protein, is anchor the thick filament, which is the myosin. Okay, and if you see myosin, it has head, many head. This is what we call the myosin head. Okay, and then if you see the Z disc, which is it's also protein that border one sarcomere with another sarcomere, it anchor the thin filament. So this is the thin filament, which is called the actin. Okay, so this is how the sarcomere look like. If you see under the microscope, it's going to look like this. So you see the border, the stripe over here, because of the arrangement of the actin and myosin. Actin is the thin filament, and the myosin is the thick filament. So you see the stripe. You see stripe under the microscope because of these arrangements of the actin and myosin. Okay. When it is relaxed, okay, if you look at this distance between Z disc with the other Z disc over here, so one sarcomere, during relaxation, it has this long distance. When it is contracted, then what happens? It becomes shorter. Okay, it becomes shorter. When it is fully contracted, like this becomes even a lot shorter. So basically, when the muscle contracted, the sarcomere is become shorter. So what happened is actually this head of the myosin will pull this actin to the middle. So going to the middle over here. Okay, so going to the middle over here. Okay, so when it is contracted, then what happened? It is become shorter. This is under the microscope. This is relaxed from one Z disc to another Z disc. So we can measure this. It is longer. And this is when it is contracted. So the one Z disc, one sarcomere is become shorter. When it is fully contracted, it's even become more shorter. This is the shortest distance. Okay, so this is how the sarcomere contracted. Again, the myosin head will pull the actin into the middle. So when it is pulling that, then the Z disc distance between one Z disc to another Z disc will become shorter. Okay, now we're gonna learn the three main proteins in the muscle. Okay, three main types. The first one is called the contractile protein. This is the protein that really gives contraction. I mentioned before, this is going to be myosin and the actin. But there is another protein that regulates that contraction. And there are two of them. It's called the tropomyosin and the troponin. And there are some other proteins called the structural protein that give strength and also proper alignment on the sarcomere, like a titin. Yeah, this is like a spring type of filament. Myomycin, this is the one that's located in the middle, the M line. This is the one that anchor the myosin. Nebulin and dystrophin, this is another two protein that will maintain and reinforce the sarcomere. Now it's going to be look at the closest picture over here of myosin. So this is myosin. Okay, this is thick filament and it has head. It's called the myosin head. Okay, this is actin. So the actin filament is actually bead-like filament. Okay, so this is bead proteins. Okay, look like a ball. Okay, round proteins. Okay, and on that actin, it has dot over here. So if you see the dot, that dot is called the myosin binding site. So that is used by the myosin head to bind. So myosin head will bind to this dot. Okay. Now during relaxation, this dot or the myosin binding site will be covered by this long protein, and that long protein is called the tropomyosin. Right? So because it is covered, then there will be no contraction because the myosin head will not bind it. It will not be able to pull the actin. Okay, so that's the tropomyosin, the regulatory protein that cover the myosin binding site. There is another protein on the actin complex. It's called the troponin, and this troponin has the calcium binding site. Okay, so troponin has calcium binding site. So what does that mean? It means that whenever the calcium bind to the troponin, it will make the tropomyosin open the binding site. And then the myosin head will be able to bind the actin and will be able to pull the actin into the middle. So what does this mean? It means that for contraction, we need calcium. And without calcium, there will be no contraction. Okay. Now, the contraction of a muscle cell is called the sliding filament theory, because according to this theory, again, this actin and myosin will be sliding one another. So basically, the myosin will pull the actin to the middle, will be sliding to one another. Okay, so this is the sliding filament theory. Just remember that the length of the actin and myosin will not change. They have the same length. Okay, so it's, even though it is shorter, this sort of sarcomere, but the length is still the same. Okay? The reason it is become shorter because the Z, this is actually moving to the middle. Okay, but the length of the actin and myosin stay the same. Now the question is how this contraction began. And remember before that muscle cell, it has the excitability. It means that it can respond to the neurotransmitter that is released by our nervous system. So basically, there is an order or control from nervous system to start the contraction. Okay, the special neuron is called the motor neurons that will go to the muscle tissue or muscle cell, and it will release the neurotransmitter into that muscle cell. Okay? That neurotransmitter is actually special. It's called the acetylcholine. So this is the one that will be released into the muscle cell. And the acetylcholine then will have a receptor on the muscle cell. It will open the sodium channel, and sodium will enter into the sarcoplasm inside the muscle cell. Okay. Inside the muscle cell, inside the sarcoplasm, is using the sarcolemma T tubules in order to go to the sarcoplasm. Inside the sarcoplasm, it will trigger the release of calcium from the SR. See that? Yeah. So the calcium is needed for contraction, right? It will bind to the troponin. However, to be released, it's require sodium. Sodium. And sodium enter the cell because of this acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter that released by our motor neuron. So basically, the order of muscle contraction is coming from the nervous system releasing the acetylcholine. Acetylcholine open the sodium channel, sodium enter into the cell. It will trigger the release of calcium from the SR. And then that calcium will bind to the troponin. When it is bind to the troponin, tropomyosin will open the binding site, the myosin binding site. Therefore, the myosin head will be able to bind to this binding site and then start the contraction cycle. So this is how the contraction begins. This is an electron microscope showing us the motor neuron, the nervous system that go to skeletal muscle over here. So this is area, what we call the synapse. Okay, so the area between the motor neurons and the muscle tissue. And in this synapse, this motor neuron will be releasing its neurotransmitter. It's called the acetylcholine or ACH. Okay, that's the name of neurotransmitter released by the motor neuron in this synaptic cleft between the neurons and the muscle. And this cleft is called the neuromuscular junction, NMJ, neuromuscular junction. Okay, so again, I'm gonna put the process over here step by step. So let's say this is our brain, this is our spinal cord. So brain, spinal cord, and then from spinal cord there will be neuron called the motor neurons. Okay, so this is motor neuron. Okay, this motor neuron will release the neurotransmitter. This neurotransmitter is called the acetylcholine, ACH. Okay, now on the muscle tissue, a muscle cell, there will be receptor for the neurotransmitter, for the acetylcholine. So whenever the acetylcholine binds to this receptor, it will open the sodium channel. Okay, and just remember there are so many sodium outside the cell. Okay, so when the sodium channel open, gonna use different color for sodium. So the sodium will enter into this cell, but it's gonna be using this tube, this tubule. It's not directly go to the sarcoplasm. It will using this. So it's a positive charge, right? Sodium is positive. It will enter into the sarcoplasm using this tubule. Okay, then it will enter into the sarcoplasm. Remember, inside here, there is a sarcoplasmic reticulum, this is SR, when there are so many calcium in it, because this is calcium storage, right? So when the sodium enter into the sarcoplasm, it will trigger the opening of calcium channel. Yes, this is calcium channel on the SR. Okay? When the calcium channel open because of this sodium, right, then calcium will out from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay, and it will bind to the troponin. Okay, when the calcium binds to the troponin, tropomyosin will open the binding site. Then the myosin head will bind to the actin. Okay. Now, in order to contract, it's required ATP, and ATP is made in this mitochondria. Okay, so this is mitochondria. Okay, and in order to make ATP, we need oxygen plus the glucose. Okay, it will enter into this process and finally produce the ATP plus the waste products with the carbon dioxide and water. Okay, and this is the ATP that will be used for pulling the actin by the myosin. So this sarcomere will contract it whenever we have the ATP. Now we're gonna list the chemical that is needed for this muscle contraction. We start with the neurotransmitter that is released by the motor neuron. It's called the acetylcholine. Okay? And then the acetylcholine will bind to the receptor, open the sodium channel. So another one that we need is sodium. Sodium will enter into the sarcoplasm using the T tubule. It will trigger the opening of calcium channel in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So we need calcium over there. Okay? And then in order to contract, then we need the ATP. This is the energy for contraction. And remember, ATP made from, produced from glucose plus oxygen. Okay, so this is also molecules or chemical that needed for muscle contraction. Okay, really important. Acetylcholine, sodium, calcium, ATP made from glucose and oxygen. Okay, this is again the step-by-step process of muscle contraction. Start with the motor neurons that release the acetylcholine on the synaptic cleft. It will bind to the receptor. It will open the sodium channel, and sodium will enter into the cell, trigger the opening of this calcium channel. So calcium will release from the SR into this space. It binds to the troponin, bind to the troponin over here. It will make the troponin open the binding site. When it is open, then the myosin head will bind to this binding site. If there is a ATP, then it will pull the actin into the middle. That's contraction. Now, how about relaxation? When there is no acetylcholine release anymore, what happens? It will trigger the removal of calcium back into the SR. When there is no calcium available in the sarcoplasmic, then what happens? The troponin will let the tropomyosin to cover the myosin binding head, the binding site. Therefore, the myosin head will not be able to bind to this binding site, and the muscle will be relaxed. Okay, so this is how the contraction and the relaxation happenings or occurring in a muscle cell. Now we go to the contraction cycle. Remember, in order to start contraction, after the myosin head bind to the actin, the myosin binding site on the actin, it requires the ATP. Okay, so ATP will bind to the myosin head. It will cause the myosin head to attach to the actin, making what we call the cross bridge. So ATP will hydrolysis and make the myosin to attach to actin, causing what we call the cross bridge. And then whenever the cross bridge present, then there will be power stroke, which is the pulling, the pulling of actin by the myosin. After pulling, then there should be detachment. Otherwise, that contraction will stay. It's called the tetanus. It has to be detachment. In order to have detachment, then another ATP has to come to this myosin head in order to detach. So basically there are two ATP that is needed for this cycle. The first ATP will be used for pulling, the power stroke, and the other ATP then coming after that in order to detach the cross bridge. the cycle keep repeating whenever the calcium is available on the sarcoplasm. Okay, so again, we start with this cycle over here. Okay, the first one, okay, the ATP will hydrolyze. When it is hydrolyzed, then this head, myosin head, will bind to this binding site, making what we call the cross bridge. So this is what we call the cross bridge. And then after that, the ATP, or after hydrolyze, will also pull the actin to the middle. And this is what we call the power stroke. Okay? In order to detach this bridge, a new ATP has to be produced and attached to the myosin head. So whenever ATP attached to the myosin head, it will detach the bridge. Okay? It will release the attachment. And this is what we call the detachment of the cross bridge. It's require an ATP. Now, how the relaxation happening? Of course, our muscle will not contract always to perform contraction. It will also perform relaxation. Contraction, relaxation, contraction, relaxation. Relaxation is due to the acetylcholine that is released into the synaptic clefts will be removed. Will be removed by special protein. It's called the acetylcholine esterase, ACH, and it will remove the acetylcholine for the synaptic cleft. Therefore, acetylcholine will not be available. If it is not available, then sodium channel will be closed. Sodium will not enter into the cell, and then the calcium release will be also closed because no sodium inside the cell. And then the active transfer pump will pump the calcium back into the SR. And then calcium bonding protein, calcicutrin, will help hold calcium in the SR. So it will stay in the SR about 10,000 times higher than calcium concentration in the cytosol, in the sarcoplasm. And then tropomyosin tropamine complex will recover the binding site. It will cover the binding site. Therefore, the myosin head will not bind to it. It will relax the muscle. Now, there are several agents or chemical that able to change these contractions in the muscle tissue. Like, for example, Botox, botulinum toxin, it is produced by bacteria. It will block the release of neurotransmitter from the motor neuron. What is the result? The muscle will not contract. It's called the paralyze. Okay, it will paralyze the muscle. And it is bad if it is actually paralyze the diaphragm, which is the muscle that used for breathing. It actually will cause the people that have the infection of this Botox die because of they unable to breathe. Okay, as you know that Botox is usually used for removing wrinkle, right, in the face. So what is wrinkle? Wrinkle is actually muscle contraction. Okay, so when Botox is injected in the wrinkle area, then the wrinkles will be removed. It's actually paralyzed. Okay, so wrinkles is contraction. It can be paralyzing by this Botox injection. So it is used by several medical field, okay, for removing wrinkles or maybe during the surgery in order to paralyze the muscle. There is another chemical, it's called the curare, and this curare is actually come from plant. It is a plant poison chemical, okay, from poison arrow. It will block the acetylcholine receptor. So maybe acetylcholine will be released by the motor neuron, but the receptor is blocked by the curare. And what's the result? It's going to be the same like the Botox, is paralyzed because there will be no contraction because sodium will not enter into the cell, and at the end the calcium will not be released from the SR. There will be no contraction, paralyzed. And the last one is neostigmine. This is actually anticholine esterase. This is the one that will actually block the acetylcholine esterase, the enzyme that removes the acetylcholine. Okay, so when this enzyme removed, what happened? The acetylcholine will keep available. Okay, keep available. When the acetylcholine keep available, what does that mean? The contraction will keep going. Okay, so what is the result? It's going to be what we call the tetanus. Tetanus means the muscle that keep contracted. Okay, so these three chemicals, they are sometimes used in medical setting for surgery. You know, sometimes surgeon need the Botox or curare in order to paralyze the muscle during surgery, and sometimes they also need neostigmine in order to make the muscle contracted during surgery. Okay, now we go to the muscle metabolism, which is the production of the ATP. Remember, ATP is required in order to start the pulling of the actin by the myosin head. Now, where the ATP coming from? There are four sources in the muscle tissue, in the muscle cell. The first one, there are free ATP that usually available in the sarcoplasm. This is usually that will be used for, that will use first for contraction. Right? So any available ATP in the sarcoplasm will be used first for contraction, but they only available maybe about for maybe less than 2 seconds or 3 second contraction. So it's really fast, it's gone. And then the second one will be coming from the ATP storage in the muscle tissue, in the muscle cell. It's called the creatine phosphate. Okay? This one maybe will make the muscle to contract about 10 seconds. Okay. And after that, ATP storage in the creatine phosphate will be gone. Okay. But sometimes it is enough for a runner, a sprinter, especially 100-meter sprinter, to use creatine phosphate to contract their muscle during running. So there are some people that use this creatine phosphate. So they buy the creatine phosphate from market. They take it in order to increase the ATP availability. But again, it's maybe only for 10 seconds. Now the rest, if we need muscle contraction for more than 10 seconds, maybe minutes or even hours, then we have to provide ATP from cellular respiration. Okay, so aerobic cellular respiration, which is the glucose and oxygen. So they are needed for making this ATP. Okay, so this is what we call the aerobic. Air means oxygen. Okay? Aerobic cellular respiration that will produce ATP for longer muscle contraction. And this is the main source for our contraction. Okay? And then if we continue, for example, exercise, we may be gasping, and what happened, the oxygen will be very difficult, so we breathe difficultly, and the oxygen will be used for organ that is important, like the brain and the cardiac muscle, okay, the heart. Therefore, the skeletal muscle will not receive the oxygen, but the skeletal muscle still be able to produce ATP, okay, using process, what we call the fermentation or anaerobic cellular respiration. Okay? So production of ATP without oxygen. Okay? Without oxygen to produce this ATP. But the ATP produced from this fermentation is really low in number, only 2 ATP per glucose. While using the aerobic respiration, we able to produce at least around 38 ATP per glucose for glucose molecule. This one and only 2 ATP per 1 glucose molecule. Okay. So again, these are the 4 main sources for muscle contractions in the skeletal muscle. Okay, we see the creatine phosphates. Remember, I mentioned before that creatine phosphate is kind of storage for ATP in muscle tissue. So when it is needed, it can be converted into ATP. And this ATP then can be used for muscle contraction. If it is not needed, if we still have ATP, it can be converted back to the creatine phosphate. This ATP, extra ATP, can be stored in this creatine phosphate. If we need it, then we're going to use it to produce muscle contraction. It's only 10, 15 seconds. Okay, for 100-meter sprinter, maybe enough for them to sprint for 100 meters. And this is the primary source for our contraction, which is coming from the aerobic oxygen. Using oxygen, cellular respiration. Again, glucose plus oxygen will produce ATP. And this is used for any contraction over 30 seconds, maybe minutes or even hours. And it is provide about 90% of ATP used during our contraction. And again, this is how it's happening. Again, the main molecules that used for making the ATP is the glucose, okay, plus oxygen. Then it's go to the mitochondria and it produce the ATP. If we don't have enough glucose, sometimes that can be also coming from the fatty acid, the energy storage that we have. So glucose will go in here, okay, into pyruvic acid, and finally making it. If we don't have, also we can use it from amino acid. So protein can be used for making ATP2, but it is only happening when we don't have glucose in our system. But if we still have the glucoses, then the fatty acid, amino acid will not be used. It will keep in the storage. Now this is anaerobic respiration, which is called the fermentation. Again, the glucose will be used for glycolysis, and it's only produced 2 ATP and produce the 2 lactic acid that will go to the blood, and it can actually poison the blood. So it is not good for the blood. Okay, so usually we will not perform this fermentation for a longer time. This is the reason why we have what we call the muscle fatigue. So exhausted. The muscle will stop performing contraction if we do not have any more oxygen in our system, because the production of lactic acid will causing our muscle to stop. It is poisoning our muscle and blood. Okay? So the primary factor, so this is actually protective mechanism in order to keep our muscles in a good shape. Otherwise, it will be broken if we continue contraction. So there are several contributions. This is coming from central fatigue feeling in our brain, and insufficient of acetylcholine from the motor neuron, depletion of creatine phosphates, decline of calcium within the sarcoplasm, insufficient oxygen and glycogen, and remember this, the buildup of lactic acid will also causing the muscle to stop contracting. Okay? This is what we call the muscle fatigue. Okay, now we go to the next discussion, which is about the motor unit. Okay, remember there is, let's say this is brain, this is spinal cord, right? This is a motor neuron that go to the muscle cell. Okay, so this one motor neuron, sometimes they go to 10 muscle cell or sometimes 1,000 muscle cell. Okay? The other over here, let's say this one, maybe only go to maybe 10, 20 muscle cell, while the first one over here, 1,000 muscle cell. Okay? So each of these is called motor unit. So motor units mean one motor neuron that innervates group of muscle. So if you see here, there are 2 motor units in these figures. So the first one over here, this motor neuron, innervate 1, 2, 3, 3 muscle group. This is one motor unit. This is another one motor unit over here that only innervate 2 muscle group. This is another motor unit. So there are 2 motor units in this picture. So again, one motor unit means one motor neuron that innervates a group of muscle. Okay, could be 10, even sometimes 2,000 muscle cells in one unit. Okay, now how the muscle contractions happenings, how it look like if we use what we call the myogram. Okay, we can actually check the graphic or the graph how the muscle contracted. Now, when we use this myogram, it will give us 3 stages over here. Start with the latent periods. This is the time when the calcium being released from the SR. It's about 2 milliseconds. It's really fast. It is in milliseconds, not only second, it is millisecond. Okay, 1 million less than second. 2 milliseconds for latent period, and then after that, boom, there is a contraction. So it's contraction when the sliding filaments is actually happening. So when the actin and myosin, the myosin pull the actin, causing this contraction period, usually happening around 10 to 100 milliseconds. And then after that, boom, going down, is this relaxation period. This is happening when the calcium is actually returned back to the SR, sarcoplasmic reticulum, and it takes about 10 to 100 milliseconds to perform this. So this is the contractions look like in the myogram. This one contractions over here is called the twitch. One twitch of contraction. Okay, and usually if only one twitch like this, it will not be meaningful. In order to make a meaningful contraction, we need to have a lot of twitch that coming together in order to give the strong and meaningful contraction. Like this. So we need what we call the wave summation in order to give the meaningful contraction. So wave summation basically is one twitch over here, and then another twitch will come, and then another twitch will come, another twitch will come. So a lot of twitch together. So the contraction together that happening before relaxation of the first twitch, and then finally it will give us this strong contraction. So this is the really contraction that we have when we contract our muscle. For example, when we contracting our biceps, so it has many twitches that apply one another after one another, and finally give this strong contraction. For some places, there is also what we call the motor unit recruitment, where the multiple motor units will perform contraction together in order to create not only meaningful but also skillful contraction. Example, when we moving our finger, our hand, for example, for doing something, there are actually many motor units that work together to contract several muscles together, coordinate muscle together to give us the meaningful and skillful movement. Okay, so this is what we call the motor unit recruitment. So the next one is muscle tone. This is involuntary contraction of small number of motor units. And usually our back, we have muscle tone like this. So some muscle keep contracted. So this is what we call the muscle tone. Because it will keep the muscle firm even though it's relaxed. Usually doesn't give a movement. It's just like, for example, it will make our posture in balance. There is no movement on our back, for example, but our posture will keep like that because of this muscle. So it is essential to maintaining our posture. And also for the smooth muscles in the blood, it's important to maintain the blood pressure. So the muscles in the blood vessel, for example, it keep contracted, because to maintain this blood pressure. Now we're gonna see two main type of contraction. The first one is called the isotonic, and the second one is called the isometric. Okay, so isotonic, there are two types, whether concentric or eccentric. Okay. Now, what is concentric? This is the contraction that we usually use when we moving object. So this muscle over here will be contracted to move the object. So the object will be moving. This is what we call the concentric muscle contraction. Okay. The second type of isotonic is called the eccentric. This is when the object is actually really heavy. We try to move it up, but we cannot. We cannot do it because it's too heavy. But our muscle over here is contracted, which is trying to move this one. So this is what we call the eccentric. Okay, eccentric. The last one, it is isometric. It means that we actually keep something in our hand without moving it, but our muscle will contract it actually. So keep these things in the place. So this is what we call the isometric contraction. Okay. So again, the concentric contraction means when we move the object with our muscle contraction. Eccentric, we are unable to move the object, but our muscle contracted. Sometimes because it's too heavy, the object actually moving away from what our contraction. And the last one, isometric. This is when we keep something in our hand and our muscle keep steady doing the contraction in order to keep this thing on this place. Okay, so that's the two main type of muscle contraction. Now we go to the classification of muscle fiber. Sometimes, people talking about white meat, okay, white meat, okay, and red meat. What is this? Okay, red meat. So when we compare about, chicken and beef, cow, then the red meat is cow, right? And the white meat is chicken. That's correct. Now, if we compare this white meat and red meat, then we will be able to see really what happened with the the muscles. So red meats mean it has more slow oxidative muscle type. It's gonna have a lot of myoglobin, because a lot of myoglobin is become red. Okay, so more of this red color on the meat. Okay, so the cow meat or beef will have this more ratio of this slow oxidative twitch muscle. Okay, between the let's go to the white meat, which is fast glycolytic. This is this one over here. This is white meat. Okay, it has less myoglobin, so therefore the color white. Okay, so chicken will have more this ratio of this meat, type of fast glycolytic. Between them, there is what we call the pink meat. It has combination of red and white. It's become this pink type of meat. It has more myoglobin compared to white meat, but less compared to the red meat. Okay, the same thing with human muscle. It is the exercise, how we perform our activities daily, will really make different ratio in our people that perform a lot of activity, usually, they have a lot of white meat. Remember white meat, chicken, they are very active, right? So they can move there, but they usually easily get tired. Okay, so the white meat. The red meat, so people that don't really perform activity, like cow, for example, they mostly staying down, but when they perform activity, it can be longer and stronger activity. Because what? Because they have more red meat. Okay, so that's the difference between white meat and red meat. So people that usually perform a lot of activity, they might have more white meat. The one that using for strong exercise, they usually have more red meat. Anabolic steroid, this is a chemical that's similar to testosterone. This is a hormones, sexual hormone produced by testicle. So this is male hormone. The function of testosterone is to increase muscle size. So remember, size is not number. So everybody actually have the same number of muscle cell, whether they are bodybuilder or the one that very skinny person, they have the same number of muscle. The one that make different is the size. Okay? So bodybuilder have bigger muscle size. And testosterone can be used to make this or to increase the muscle size. With bigger muscle size, it will give strength. It gives strength. But using anabolic steroid, this is kind of shortcut to increase muscle size. And there are negative side effects of using the steroid, anabolic steroid. It can increase liver cancer, kidney damage, heart disease, mood swing. Like for example, if it is female that using it, it might be moving their mood from female to male-like characters. Facial hair for female, it increase production of facial hair, and also change the voice on the female. It's become deeper like male. Hey, how are you? My name is Anna, for example. Okay, so that's a kind of side effects of steroid. And atrophy of testicle, because testicle is the one used for making steroid. If we take it from outside, then the testicle will be smaller and sometimes can causing the sterility. So for male, okay, it's very important. Do not use anabolic steroid if it is not really necessary. And also increase baldness, because testosterone can also increase the baldness. So some sport people, they sometimes using this anabolic steroid, and you can maybe see from their characters. Okay, now we go to the cardiac muscles. How it look like? Cardiac muscles is a little bit square shape. It's not really cylindrical, but still the same. Long muscle, like the skeletal muscle, with stripe. And the stripe is coming from actin and myosin arrangement. And then the border is called the intercalated disc, the border between one cardiac muscle with another cardiac muscle. And because it's shorter than skeletal muscle, it only have one nucleus. But it has more mitochondria. That's very important. So cardiac muscle, it has more mitochondria because what? It's never stop. So never stop contraction. So it's require a lot of ATP. And the ATP is made in this mitochondria. So a lot of mitochondria in the cardiac muscle. Between the cell, there is intercalated disc, and it has a special type of junction. It's called the gap junction. So it means that the electricity actually can go from one cardiac muscle to another cardiac muscle using this gap junction. So therefore, the contraction will be transferred from one muscle, cardiac muscle, to another cardiac muscle very fast. Again, it is how it looks like. It's going to be the same. It has myofibril with actin, thin filament actin and myosin. So it's very similar structure with the skeletal muscle. And this is another specialty of cardiac muscle. It is called the autorhythmic cell. This means that starting contraction is actually not ordered by the nervous system. It is started by itself, auto rhythm. So the rhythm is started by itself. In the area is called the pacemaker. Okay, so there are a group of cells on the right atrium that will start this contraction, and that group of cells is called the pacemaker. And the contraction is usually about normally 75 times per minute, and it is never stop contraction. Therefore, it needs a lot of oxygen, and therefore it will have more mitochondria in order to produce this ATP. And then extended contraction is possible due to the slow calcium delivery. So the calcium channel and the extracellular fluid will keep open. Therefore, calcium will keep entering into the sarcoplasm of this cardiac muscle. Okay, the last type of muscle, the smooth muscle. There are two types, visceral or single unit smooth muscle. This is usually the one that's located in the hollow organs, GI tract, respiratory tract. And there are multi-unit smooth muscle. This is the one that's located in the arrector pili, for example. Right? So what does single unit mean? Single unit means one motor neuron, each innervate 1,000 of smooth muscle. That's single unit. Multi-unit means there are several motor neuron that innervate several smooth muscle. So this is a multi-unit smooth muscle. And this is how it looks like. Why there is no stripe? So maybe you think that there is no sarcomere. There is still sarcomere in the smooth muscle. However, the actin and myosin is not really arranging in a smooth arrangement that gives stripes. Okay, so there is no stripe because this actin and myosin arrangement is not in a very good arrangement. Therefore, it's just a smooth muscle. It's no stripes or striations in this smooth muscle. And also, when it is contracted, it is kind of twisted. Okay, so it's twisted, become shorter. Just like you twist a rubber. So you twist a rubber and become shorter, and you let it go, it then going back to this regular shape again. Okay, then relax and then twist it, which is contracted. So this is how the smooth muscle contracted. The process still the same, using calcium troponin, tropomyosin, actin, and myosin. The contraction is slowly and lasts longer, so this is needed by our GI tract, respiratory tract, a continuous contraction and slow contraction. And there is a difference here. The protein that bind the calcium is not called the troponin, but it is called the calmodulin. Its work a little bit different because this calmodulin is actually activate the enzyme myosin light chain kinase that will facilitate myosin actin binding site. Okay, so the troponin is actually the one that will remove the tropomyosin from binding site, but this calmodulin is the one that stimulates the binding of myosin head into the actin whenever this calmodulin bind the calcium. Again, smooth muscle tone, as I mentioned before, it's going to be slow contraction and keep contracting. And this is needed in order to control the movement of contents of the hollow organs, like GI tracts, the food inside our local organ, or blood vessels, the blood that keep flowing in the blood vessel. It has to be keep flowing by this slow muscle tone. Okay, we finished with all these muscles. Now we're gonna see how this muscle regenerate. Can they make a cell division? Remember, there are 4 types of tissue, right? Epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. And remember again, the epithelial tissue is the one that able to regenerate very easily. Okay? If your skin cell gone, it will be replaced easily. Connective tissue like blood, bone, when it is broken, it can be replaced also. However, muscles, only smooth muscle that can be replaced. Okay? If the blood vessel, for example, is smooth muscle being cut, it can be regenerated. It can grow again. The cardiac muscles and the skeletal muscle, it cannot be regenerated. It's become scar. Whenever it is broken, then it's become scar tissue. It will not regenerate to make a new skeletal muscle tissue or cardiac muscle tissue. So that's really important. That's the reason why when somebody's heart is broken, sometimes they need heart transplant because their heart is just broken. It cannot be regenerated. The same thing with the skeletal muscle. When it is broken, it's become scar tissue. Aging and muscle tissue. So skeletal muscle start to be replaced by fat beginning at age 30. So this is really use or lose it. If we use it, then our muscle become better. If we do not really use it, then there will be more fat deposited in around the muscle tissue. And we start to become slowing in our reflex when we are older. Also decrease the strength and change the fiber type. From to slow oxidative fiber. Okay, so from fast, like chicken, the white meat. Okay, and when we get older, many of our muscle cell change into slow oxidative type of muscle tissue or red meat. Okay, use or disuse the skeletal muscle. So this is special for skeletal muscle. Hypertrophy, this is usually for bodybuilder. They force their muscles so much that making their muscles so big. And this is what we call the hypertrophy, enlargement of skeletal muscle. Atrophy, this is opposite. When we do not use our muscles so much, then the size will be decreased. Okay, so hypertrophy is so much, atrophy is so little use of muscle. Aerobic exercise will stimulate slow twitch muscle fiber. The forceful exercise will stimulate fast twitch muscle. Okay, so this is white meat. Okay, slow twitch is the red meat. Okay, so when we use the aerobic exercise compared to the forceful exercise, then our ratio of white and red meat is gonna be different. Some disorder, two main types of disorder of muscle. Myasthenia gravis, this is progressive autoimmune disorder. This means that our antibody is actually attacking our tissue, and they usually blocking the ACH receptor. It can cause paralysis. Okay, so paralyze on some area of our muscle. So this is myasthenia gravis. So our muscle become weaker. Most common on women, 20 to 40, with some thymus gland problem. Sometimes they have double vision and difficulty to swallowing. Some treatment using some steroid that bind to the ACH receptor. Muscular dystrophies, this is inherited. So this is genetic type of disorder when the muscle actually destroyed. So sarcolemma tears easily during muscle contraction. So this is carried by the X chromosome. Therefore, mostly appears on males because male only carry one X chromosome. So male is XY. If this X chromosome carry this gene, muscular dystrophy, then this male will have that problem. While female, they have X and X. If it is one carry the gene, there is still another X that cover this problem. Okay, so mostly male will have this muscular dystrophy syndrome. There are also some abnormal contractions. Sometimes we feel it like spasm, involuntary contractions of single muscle, boom. Cramp, this is a really painful spasm. Tick, this is involuntary twitching. Sometimes our eyelid just twitching is called tick. Tremor is a rhythmic involuntary contraction of muscle group. Fasciculation, this is involuntary brief twitch of motor unit that sometimes is visible under the skin. Some induced muscle damage, like for example, intense exercise can cause muscle damage. So if we never exercise and suddenly we exercise so much, then it can cause muscle damage. So really important, if you never exercise, do not start exercise with a forceful exercise. Do not force yourself if you never exercise. It has to be little by little. Sometimes there is a delay onset. This is usually happening after 12-40 hours after exercise. Then we feel that soreness in our muscle and also stiffness in the muscle. The last one is rigor mortis. What happened with rigor mortis? So this is muscle that keep contracting when somebody died. This is the reason, because when somebody dies, they will not produce the ATP anymore. Therefore, their muscle will keep in this power stroke. So keep contracting, because this ATP will not bind to this myosin head. So basically in rigor mortis, this one is not happening. Relaxation will not happening. It's about maybe 24, 40 hours that muscles will keep stiffness like that. That's what we call the rigor mortis, like zombie, right? So zombie, the muscle stiffness. This is actually a type of rigor mortis. Okay, I think that's all for this muscle tissue. We're gonna continue again with more about the muscular system, especially the muscle organs. Goodbye. Hi everyone. So today we will continue muscular system. In this lecture, we will discuss about the liver systems, muscle origins and insertions, surface of some important muscles, and the intermuscular injection sites. Okay, so the muscular system, so when we talk about the muscular system, it is only include the voluntary muscles. Okay, so this is only discuss about the skeletal muscles. So this is what we call the muscular system. And this muscular system and the muscle tissue contribute to some homeostasis, okay, by producing movement, stabilizing body positions, regulating organ volume, for example, pumping the blood from the heart, moving substances within the body, okay, and also producing heat, like during cold weather, our body performs shivering, which is producing heat to increase the body temperature. The muscle and the bones create a mechanical system that is called levers. Okay, so liver is mechanical system in our body that is created by the muscles and the bones, and this gives some movements of our body. Each end of muscle is attached to bone with a connective tissue that is called tendon. So tendon is a band of connective tissue that attaches bone to muscle or muscle to bone. Okay, this is what we call the tendon. And the tendons that attach to the more movable bone is called insertions. The one that attach to the less movable bones is called the origins. So examples, we can use these elbow joints. Okay, so when we contract our bicep, so this is the muscles, okay, and this bicep is actually have two attachment or two tendon. The first one is attached to this scapula over here on the top, and the second one is the one that attached to the radius ulna bone. So when we contract the bicep, you know that this radius ulna will move up, what we call the flexion. So if you see these two bones, is actually, the radius ulna is the bone that more movable, and the scapula and the humerus over here is the one that really less movable. So therefore, if you see these tendons over here, okay, so this tendon over here, it is called the insertions. Okay, because this is attached to the movable bone. The other tendon, so gonna be this one, is attached to the less movable bone. Therefore, this tendon is called the origin. Okay, so the muscle have two tendons, the origins and the insertion. The middle part of the muscle itself is called the belly. Okay, so belly, origin, and insertion. So this is three parts of muscle that attach to our bones and move our bones, our skeleton. Okay, so again, this is the schematic picture of this muscle part. Again, the middle part is called the belly, which is actually the meat or the muscles, and the two part is the tendon over here. The one that attaches to the movable part is called insertions. The tendon that attaches to the less movable bone is called the origin. So origins, belly. So origin, belly, and insertion. So this is part of the muscle that attaches to our bone. And the basic movement is given by the system called the liver system. So the liver system is the mechanical system in our body that move our skeletons, our body. So there are four components of this liver system. The first one, of course, is the bone. So this bone over here, radius ulna, humerus, scapula, all of them is called the liver. So this is the first part, which is the bone itself is called the liver. And the fixed points, usually the joint, is called the fulcrum. So this is the second part of the liver system, the fulcrum. The next part is called the load, which is the resistance or the weight that is present in our body. So this is the resistance or the load. Sometimes we don't carry anything, it will still have the resistance, still have the load. Okay, so this is the third part of the liver, which is the load or the resistance. And the last one is the effort, which is the contraction that is given by the muscles. So this is what we call the effort or E. And this is going to be the fourth components of the liver system. Okay, so liver system consists of bone, fulcrum, the load, and the effort. So the muscle that whose attachment is farther from the fulcrum or from the joint usually gives stronger force. Like for example, our thigh muscles is give a very strong force when we kick something from our hip joint. Right? The muscle that attaches closer to the joints give a greater range of motion. Like for example, in our hands, our finger, the attachment is very close to one another. Okay? So it's give greater range of motion and also the speed. However, the force is actually less compared to this longer attachment muscle. Okay, so the muscle that has a closer attachment give wider range of motions and also speed, but it will give less force compared to the muscle that have longer attachment site. Okay, classification of liver system. There are 3 types of liver system or classes. The first one is of course called the first class liver. Okay. And this is EFL. So the effort coming before the fulcrum and the load. Okay. So the fulcrum will be in the middle. The effort comes first. And the load will be the last here. So if we look at our skull, so we able to move our head, okay, up and down, right? So mostly if we don't have any contractions, our head will be going down because there is a load in our head, in our face. So if someone that's sleepy, they usually their face falling down, because what there is a load over here. In order to lift it up, then the effort have to be made, which is the effort is coming from contractions of muscles in our neck. So this neck muscle, when it is contract, it will lift the face up. And this is actually what happens with us every day. We keep our face up because there is a contraction or effort that coming from these muscles in our neck. And the fulcrum or the joint is located here between the second vertebrae, is called axis, and the skull. So this is the EFL, the first class liver. So the second one is called the second class liver. This is FLE. So the fulcrum is the first, and then the load will be in the middle, which is actually the load of or the weight of our body, and the effort is coming less. Okay, the muscle contractions in our back of the leg. Okay? So if we want to lift up our body, okay, we have to do the effort from this muscle. So when this muscle contracted, and will lift up our body, load in the middle, and the fulcrum, the fixed point stay, then our body will be lifting up. So this is the second class liver, FLE. And the third one is called the third class liver. This is FEL. So the fulcrum comes first. Like example, this is a elbow joint, and the effort is in the middle, which is the bicep muscles over here. When the bicep contracted, what happened? It will flex our elbow. It will lift our lower arms. Okay, this is flexion. So our hand over here is the load. So FEL. So this is the third class of liver. So in our body, again, there are 3 classes of liver system. First class liver, EFL. The second class liver, FLE. And the third class liver, FEL. So some muscles, they also perform coordination. Okay, so when we move our body, Sometimes it's not only one muscle contraction, sometimes it is more than one muscle contraction. Or even sometimes there are some muscles that have to coordinate when one muscle contract and the other muscle should be relaxed. So this is the coordinations within our muscle groups. There are several types of coordinations. The first one is called the agonist or prime mover, and this is usually the main muscles that produce movement to a certain direction. So when this agonist or the prime mover contracts, it will move our body to certain direction. The antagonistic muscles is going to be pairs muscles. This is the 2 or 3 or 4 muscles that work in opposite way. So if one muscle contract, the other muscle should be relaxed. Examples, when we talk about the elbow joints, okay, you have muscles over here. It's called bicep in the front. Okay. And on the back of your upper arm, you have muscle called the triceps. Okay, so when you flex your elbow, which is the bicep will be contracted, then the triceps should be relaxed. Okay, so this is these two muscles is called the antagonistic muscles. One contract, the other one will be relaxed. If you contract the bicep, what happens? Your elbow will be extended. So this is extension. Okay? So when the triceps contracted, then the biceps should be relaxed. Okay, so again, this is examples of antagonistic muscles. The next one is called the synergistic muscle. This is also pair of muscle. But this one, both muscle will give contraction to move our body to the same direction. Okay, so just for information, when we flex our elbow, there is a muscle over here, bicep, that will be contracted. There is another muscle that actually also needed to perform this contraction. So these two muscles will perform contraction to move our body or part of our body to same direction. And this is what we call the synergistic muscle. This muscle, the other muscle is called the brachialis muscles. Okay, so brachialis muscle, which is located next to the bicep. Okay, sometimes we only think that on the bicep that will flex the elbow. It is not. Actually, there are two muscles that work together to flex our elbow, which is bicep and brachialis. So this bicep and brachialis is called the synergistic muscle. The last one is this group of muscle that is called the fixators. And this is the muscle that fix or stabilize the origin or the bones, the prime mover. So therefore, it will not going away. It will stay on in its place. Like for example, if we rotate our shoulder, if you form the rotation or circumduction on our elbow, there will be muscles like latissimus dorsi muscles in our back that will keep our bones, our humerus and the joints over there in its place. And this group of muscle is called the fixator. Okay, so that's how the muscle move with the liver system and also muscle coordination. Now, just for your information, there are about 700 muscles, skeletal muscle that is actually located in our body. And this muscle make some movement possible, even some expression possible. Like for example, when we smile, when we are laughing, when we are talking, for example, it will give some expressions in our face. This is actually coming from the muscle contraction and relaxation in some of our facial muscle. So there are about 700 different type of muscles in our body. How they're named? Okay, usually they name based on their characteristics, sometimes their directions, how they go, okay, and the size of the muscle, the shape of the muscle, the actions, how many origins, okay, the number of origins, their locations can also give the idea about their name, and the site of origins and the insertion. So basically, muscles will be given names for some of their characteristic, location, origin, and etc. Okay, example. This is examples of name of muscle. On the back of our upper arm, we have what we call the tricep brachii. Okay, so brachii is actually location. Okay, this is arms, especially upper arm. So you know this muscle will be located in the upper arm. That's brachii mean. Tricep, the name is telling you there is three. There is three origins. There is three origin of this muscle. So this muscle actually have three tendons for the origins. So only one tendon as its insertion. So three origins, three origin that this muscle have. So this muscle have the name tricep brachii, which is the upper arm muscle that have three origins. Look at another example over here, quadratus femoris. So the name, the femoris over here is telling you this is location. So femur is the thigh. Okay, so this muscle located in our thigh. So this is thigh muscle. Quadratus. Okay, this is quadrat, square. Okay, it has a shape like a square, has a square shape. So this is the name of these muscles, quadratus femoris. Look at another name over here. This muscle is actually located in the anterior side of our body. So that's the name is telling you on the anterior side. And this is serratus. Serratus means muscle that look like teeth. Okay, so have a teeth like appearance. Okay, so this is what we call the serratus. Okay, so serratus anterior, this is saw-toothed edge muscle that's located in the anterior part of our body. This is actually in the front of our body under our chest area. So we're gonna see these muscles later. So this is examples how the muscles are given name, okay, based on their characteristic, location, origin, and other things. Okay, now we're gonna see some of the major skeletal muscles in our body. We're gonna start from the anterior view or anterior side. Okay. Okay, let's see from the top over here. Let's see on the frontal, just on the frontal. In the frontal bones, we have muscle called the frontalis. Okay, so this is the frontalis muscles. When we contract it, it's gonna leave our eyebrow, right? So this is frontalis. Orbicularis oculi. Okay, oculi mean eyes. Okay, orbicularis means circle. So this is the muscle that's circling the eyes. This is the one that actually will close our eyes. Okay, zygomaticus. Yeah, remember zygomatic mean cheek. Yeah, so this is muscles on our cheek. Masseter, this is also in the cheek under this zygomaticus and usually used for helping in chewing. Orbicularis oris, again orbicularis means circle, oris means mouth, so this is muscle that circle our mouth. Okay? When we kiss, for example, we're gonna use this orbicularis oris muscle. Sternocleidomastoid muscle, this is muscle on the neck. This is the one that moves our head. So when we say no, 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 it's actually using this muscle contraction. Okay, sternocleidomastoid muscle. Deltoid muscle, this is in the shoulder over here. And when we contract this muscle, what happens? Our arms will be lifted up. Okay, so this is abduction. Okay, so when you abduct your arm, it is actually using mostly the deltoid muscle. Okay, pectoralis major, this is what we call the pec muscle. So if you do exercise, you know this is the pec muscle. And this is the one that helps us when we rotate our shoulder or also perform the adduction. When you take your arm down close to your body, this is called adduction. It's usually done by this pectoralis muscle. Bicep brachii, so this one over here in the front part, and the name is telling you this is brachii mean upper arm, and bicep, this muscle have two origins. We're gonna see that two origins later. Okay, and this is the other muscle is called the brachialis. I mentioned before bicep brachii and brachialis. This is the two synergistic muscle that will flex our elbow. Okay, so this is flexion. So this is synergistic muscle, bicep brachii and brachialis. Brachioradialis, this is muscle that can be used to rotate or twist our arms over here. Let's see, this is gracilis, vastus medialis. So this is part of the thigh muscles, quadriceps femoris. Okay, usually when we contract this muscle, it will extend our knee. So this is usually for extensions of the knee. Okay, gastrocnemius, which is muscle on the back of our leg over here. When we contract it, it will put this foot down. Okay, this is called the plantar flexions. Okay, remember the movement on the joint. Some of them is called flexion, plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, and etc. So gastrocnemius can perform plantar flexion. Soleus muscle, this is also helping to twist our leg. Okay, I'm gonna go to the top again, the trapezius muscles over here, is it? And the shoulder and neck area. Serratus anterior, remember serratus means look like teeth. So this muscle is look like a teeth, and it is located in the anterior part of our body. This is also used to perform, adduction, circumductions together with this pectoralis major muscle. External oblique, rectus abdominis. This is the muscle of our abdomen. It's helping us, for example, when we perform sit-ups, it will be using these abs muscles. This is ab muscles. This is pec muscle. Okay. Tensor fasciae latae. This is on the thigh and the leg. Sartorius. This is also legs muscles or thigh muscles. Rectus femoris. This is also part of the thigh muscle. Adductor longus is going to be in the middle side, in the groin area over here, and the name is telling you the function actually. So this is when we perform adductions in our thigh. Adduction means when you move your leg from outside to the middle. Okay? So when you move your leg over here, let's say from outside going to the middle, this is what we call the adduction. It's performed mainly by this adductor muscle. Vastus lateralis, this is part of the quadricep muscles, the thigh muscle, the femoris muscle. Fibularis longus, tibialis anterior, this is the muscles in the front of our legs. And if we contract this muscle, it will leave the foot. And this is what we call the dorsiflexions. So dorsiflexion is performed by contraction of tibialis anterior muscle. Extensor digitorum, this is the muscle that will extend the digit, the toes over here. This is the extensor digitorum longus muscle. So these are examples of muscles in the front part of our body. On the back part, in the posterior side of our body, we have on the side over here temporalis muscle. This muscle is important when we chewing our food. It's lift our mandible up when we contract it. And then occipitalis, this is on the back, on the occipital bone. Trapezius muscle, we already see it also from the front, some of them. So this is on the back. This is also the muscle that will help to move our shoulder when we perform circumductions, abductions. Deltoid muscle, we already see it from the front also. Teres minor and teres major. This is also muscle that used for movement in our shoulder over here. Tricep brachii, this is on the back, and this is the one that will extend our elbow. Bicep femoris, this is part of the hamstring muscle, the muscle on the back of our thigh. Usually if we contract this, it will flex the knee. So this is for knee flexion. Consists of semi-tendinous, semi-membranous. So all of this muscle is actually part of a group of muscle. It's called the hamstring muscles. And then gastrocnemius, we already mentioned that. And calcaneal tendon, this is the tendon, this is the actually connective tissue that connects this gastrocnemius with the calcaneus bones, the heel bone. Okay, infraspinatus, this is also the one that help moving our shoulder. Okay, circumduction, adductions, rhomboid muscles is similar. Latissimus dorsi, this is on the back of our body. It's a big muscle that we use for sit up and stand up, for example. This is the muscle that keep our body stabilized during standing up or sitting down. External oblique, this is actually from we see it from the front area also. The butt muscles, or the buttock muscle, this consists of gluteus maximus. This is the big one over here. Okay, this is smaller one is called medius. There is another one is called the gluteus minimus, which is under the gluteus maximus. If we cut this muscle, then you will see the gluteus minimus muscle. And this is also help during movement of our hip over here when we perform circumductions, for example, rotation. It's gonna be using these gluteal muscles. Adductor, we already mentioned that adductor muscle in the middle part. This is the function is coming from the name. Adductor, so this is adduction muscle, the one that will perform adduction. Gracilis muscles, vastus lateralis, this is part of the quadriceps femoris muscle, sartorius, fibularis longus, and soleus muscle. So these are some of major muscles on the posterior part of our body. We're gonna survey one by one now, based on the location. So on the face, so facial muscle, the one that give the facial expressions, okay, when we're smiling, laughing, crying, and etc. Yeah, these actually given by these muscles, okay, muscle of facial expression. Many of them, I'm gonna just put example 4 of these muscles here. Orbicularis oculi, and again, oculi mean eyes. Orbicularis means circle. So this is the muscle that circle the eyes. So circling the eyes. Okay, so this muscle usually used for closing our eyes. Levator palpebrae. So palpebrae mean eyelids. So levator mean lifting. Okay, elevation. So it's lifting our eyelids. Therefore, it's gonna be open the eyes. Orbicularis oris. Oris mean mouth. Orbicularis means circling. So this is the one that circles the mouth over here. For packing the mouth. Okay, kissing, for example. Vaccinator muscle. These muscles here in the bottoms over here. This is really important when we performing like whistling, blowing, sucking, chewing, compressing our cheek over here. It is given by this contraction of this vaccinator muscle. So compressing the cheek, including whistling, blowing, sucking, chewing. This is done by vaccinator muscle and also by some other muscle over here. Masseter, temporalis, all of these muscle will give the facial expression. Okay, let's go closer to the muscle that move our mandible, our lower jaw, up and down, or maybe front to back. Okay, there are 3 main muscles for perform this. The first one is called the temporalis, and the name is telling you this is located in the temporal bone. So this is the temporalis muscle. When you contract it, it will lift our mandible over here. Okay, so the lower jaw. The second one is masseter muscle. These muscles on the cheek over here is a really big muscle that also move our mandible. And if we cut this masseter muscle, then we will see the pterygoid muscles at the bottom. And this is also the one that performing the movement of the mandible. Okay, pterygoid muscle. Okay, again, the temporalis muscles, the masseter, and under the masseter there is a pterygoid muscle for mandible movement. Now eyeballs. Okay, remember you able to move your eyeballs left and right, up and down. Sometimes you can twist it, your eyeball also. You can see down, up, left, and right. You can move the eyeball. Why? Because there is a skeletal muscle that attached to this eyeball. There are actually 6. Okay, each eyeball will have 6 skeletal muscle that move this eyeball, and this 6 muscle is called the extrinsic muscles of the eyeball. 4 of them is called rectus. Okay, so rectus means straight. Okay, straight like horizontal or straight vertical. Okay, so this is what we call the rectus muscle. Right? There will be 4 of them: superior, inferior, lateral, and medial. Superior means is straight on the top. So this is superior rectus muscles. Okay. Inferior means at the bottom. So this is going to be the inferior rectus muscle. Okay. Lateral means outside of the middle area. If it is nose, so this is the middle area of our body. The lateral will be here. So lateral rectus muscle. Okay. And the medial mean is closer to our nose. So this is going to be medial rectus muscle. So these are the 4 rectus or straight muscles. Okay. Superior rectus. So you can see also on the top over here. Inferior rectus is going to be here at the bottom. Okay. Lateral rectus is going to be this one. Okay, and this one over here. And the medial rectus will be here. For this, the top picture over here, you will not see it because it's going to be covered by these eyeballs. Okay. And there are 2, the one that is oblique. Oblique means diagonals. Okay, this is a diagonal muscle. It is not straight muscle. Okay, it's called the oblique. It's going to be 2 of them, superior, superior oblique on the top. This superior oblique over here. And the inferior obliques over here. So it's a diagonal direction. Okay, inferior oblique at the bottom. Superior and inferior oblique. So how this muscle will move the eyeball? Let's say, for example, if you want to move your eyeball to the, this is going to be right eyes, right? Going to be to the right. Then what happened? This lateral rectus should be contracted. The medial rectus will be relaxed. Okay, so these lateral medial muscles will be antagonistic muscles. Okay, antagonistic muscle, because one relaxed, the other one contracted. Okay? So if you want to move your eyeball out, then lateral rectus will be contracted, the medial rectus will be relaxed. If you want to move your eyeball up, which one has to be contracted? It's going to be the superior rectus. The inferior rectus should be relaxed. Okay, so this superior and inferior, okay, they are also antagonistic muscle. Okay, so they work in opposite way. If you want to move your eyeball down, then the inferior rectus has to be contracted. The superior rectus has to be relaxed. Okay, this is how to move your eyeball left, right, up, and down. Now, how about if you want to twist your eyeballs a little bit, you can do it also by moving or contracting this oblique muscle, okay? Superior oblique and inferior oblique. And again, both of these superior oblique and inferior will be antagonistic muscles too. Okay, one relax, the other one contract. And this movement is controlled by our nerve. Okay, there are 12 cranial nerve. Okay, 12 cranial nerve. Three of them, which is cranial nerve number 3, number 4, and number 6. This is the one that will control this movement of the eyeball. So all of this nerve will be the motor, will carry the motor neurons. Remember, motor neuron is the one that go to your muscle, release the acetylcholine, and it will start the contraction. Okay, so this cranial nerve number 3, number 4, and number 6 will send the motor neurons that will control the eyeball movement. The muscle that move our tongue. Remember, when you move our tongue, you can do it. Because what? Because tongue is actually controlled by skeletal muscle. Remember, all the skeletal muscle that is voluntary. The muscle that you can order or control to perform the contraction. And there are 4 of these muscles that move your tongue. All of them will finish with glossus. So glossus means tongue. So glossus means tongue. So you know this is going to be tongue muscle. Okay. And the first word, the genio, stylo, palato, and hyo is actually telling you the location of the origin. So this is actually the name of the bones that make the tendon the origin for this glossus muscle, the tongue muscle. Genio glossus, this muscle over here is start from the mandible. So the origin is actually coming from the mandible bone and then go to the tongue. So this is the genioglossus muscle. And then styloglossus muscle. And the origin is coming from the bone. Part of the temporal bone is called the styloid process over here. And this is give this origin for this muscle. So this muscle then is called the styloglossus muscle. Palatoglossus, the name is telling you, is going to be coming from the upper jaw, the palatine over here. So there is a group of 2 bones on the top, on the roof of our mouth. It's called the palatine. And when the origin of the muscle coming from this palatine, giving to this tongue muscle, then this muscle is called the palatoglossus. And the last one is hyoglossus. Remember, there is hyoid bones in our neck. And this is the only one bone that is not connected with other bones. So when the muscle starts from these hyoid bones, go to the tongue. This is muscle that we call as the hyoglossus muscle. It starts from or originated from the hyoid bone and making these tongue muscles. Okay? So again, there are 4 skeletal muscles that control our tongue movement. Genioglossus, originated from mandible. Styloglossus originated from the styloid process. Palatoglossus originated from palatine. And hyoglossus originated from hyoid bones over here. The muscles in the floor of the oral cavity, digastric muscles. Digastric muscles, these muscles over here, and there is a styloid muscle. Styloid. And the name is telling you is connected the styloid process and the hyoid bones over here. So crossing from styloid to the hyoid bone, this stylohyoid. Mylohyoid muscles, gonna be the big ones over here. It's also going to the hyoid bones over here. So this is the muscle on the floor of our mouth. Now this is important over here, the sternocleidomastoid muscle. This is the big muscles on the neck that move our head. So the movement of heads, possible because of this sternocleidomastoid muscle. There are also some muscle that help that movement, stabilize the movement. It's called the scalene muscle. Scalene muscle is the muscle that connected from our vertebrae on the neck. The vertebrae, the cervical vertebrae, it is connected to the ribs, especially the top ribs. It's going to be anterior scalene, middle scalene, and posterior scalene. And these muscles will give the possible of our neck movement and head movement. The abs. The abs muscles. There are 4 actually. There are 4 ab muscles. 3 of them is on the side, and 1 of them is in the middle. And this is the one that usually give the six packs, or if you not really exercise, maybe only give you 1 pack of this muscle. So this is coming from the rectus abdominis muscle, which is the muscle that is in the middle of the ab. So 3 of them on the side. So this is actually 3 layers over here on the side. The outside layer is called the external oblique, going 1 diagonal direction. It's not straight. And then internal also oblique. It's going to be go to the opposite diagonal direction. So if you see this one, this is the external oblique, go diagonal direction. And under it, there is a second layer. It's called the internal oblique, going to the opposite direction, but still diagonal. And the last one is transverse. This is going to be the one that's straight. So this is transverse, straight, horizontal muscles at the inside layer. So the side of our body, it has 3 layers. The side of our ab, and the middle of our ab is actually 1 layer, this one over here, and this is the rectus abdominis. And this performance of muscle will give us the 6 packs type of abs. The muscle that we use for breathing, so we can also force our breathing. We breathe in, breathe out. We can force it because we have this skeletal muscle that control our breathing voluntarily. Okay? The big one is called the diaphragm. This is the muscle that's located between the thoracic cavity and the abdominal pelvic cavity. Okay? So there is a border between these two cavities, and this border is actually made of muscle, skeletal muscle. It's called the diaphragm. And this is a really important muscle over here. If this muscle doesn't work, usually you will die because you cannot breathe. If there is a toxins that paralyze this muscle, then people will die because of this difficulty of breathing. The second one is called the external intercostal muscle. So if you see, this is what we call the costae, ribs. So between the rib, there is actually muscle. There is a muscle. There is actually two layers of muscle. Layer outside is called the external, and the layer inside, this is called the internal. So therefore, there are two layers of intercostal muscle, the external intercostal muscle, and the, this is external intercostal muscle and the internal intercostal muscle. So these are the three muscles that help us breathing. Now, how they control it? When we breathe in, or during inhalations, inspirations, so inhale, when we inhale the air, two muscles will be contracted, which is diaphragm and the external intercostal muscle. So this is using for inhalation. So this muscle will contract, it will be contracted. How about the internal? The internal should be relaxed. This one should be relaxed. This one, these two muscles synergistic. This is synergistic muscle. They work together in the same directions. Number three over here, when we compare with number 1 and 2, this is gonna be antagonistic. Antagonistic muscles. So groups relax, the other one contract. So diaphragm external intercostal will be synergistic. Diaphragm external compare with the internal, they're gonna be antagonistic. So during inhalations, these two muscles, diaphragm and external, will be contracted. The internal will be relaxed. During expirations, or exhalation, only one will be contracted. Which one is that? The internal intercostal muscle will be contracted. The other two, diaphragm and external intercostal, will be relaxed. This is how we breathe. Now, what is actually coming when we contract this muscle over here during inhalation? So when we contract the diaphragm and external muscles, the thorax, the chest will be bigger. The chest will be bigger. So when the chest bigger, it's going to be ready to receive more air from outside. Therefore, we perform inhalation. Now, what happens when the internal intercostal muscle contract? Is actually will push the chest. The chest will be smaller. Just like you push a balloon. When you push the balloon, then the balloon will be smaller and the air will be out. The air out. So this is the exhalation. So this is how it's work. The internal intercostal muscle, when it is contracted, it actually will press our chest, become smaller. It will push the air out. The diaphragm and external intercostal muscle contracted, it actually will make our chest bigger, and then the air will be entering into our chest, into our lungs from outside. This is just how the diaphragm look like from the bottom. Right? This is from the abdomen area. You see this one? It look like a umbrella. Okay, so let's say this is chest. Okay, this is your chest. This is abdomen. Okay, so we'll continue. So this diaphragm's muscle is look like umbrella. So when it is relaxed, it's actually curved like umbrella over here. When it is contracted, it's actually going down, become flat. Okay, so what happens if it is flat, then the chest area become bigger. Okay, when the chest bigger, then the air will be entering into the lungs. Okay, this is how the diaphragm works. So again, when it is relaxed, it looks like an umbrella, look like a mushroom. When it is contracted, it's become flat, push down, and it will increase the volume of the chest. When the volume of the chest is increasing, then the air can move to this chest or to the lungs. Okay, so the next one is the muscles on the pelvic floor. Okay, so pelvic floor is the groin area over here. So there are three muscles actually. Okay. The big one is the coccygeus muscle. So we're gonna go from the bottom area. So this is coccygeus muscles and the floor. And the next one is gonna be this one. Okay, iliococcygeus muscles. And the last one is gonna be this. Okay, so this is the muscle that make this floor in the pelvic area. Right, so coccygeus, iliococcygeus, and pubococcygeus. Okay, I'm gonna give the number over here. This is number 1, coccygeus, number 2, iliococcygeus, and number 3, pubococcygeus muscle. Okay, now the female perineum muscles. Okay. So the first one is the urogenital triangle muscles. Okay, so this is triangle muscles over here. So the first one, external urethral sphincter, is actually here. You cannot really see it. Okay, sphincter muscles that close and open the urethra when the female urinate. Yeah, it's going to be controlled by this external urethral sphincter muscle. Ischiocavernosus. This is going to be these muscles over here. Okay, and the bulbospongiosus muscles. It's going to be these muscles over here. Right? So we're going to give the number. Number 1 is here. Number 2 is these muscles. And number 3 is these muscles. Okay? And this is the top triangle, the urogenital triangle muscles. The next one is the anal triangle muscles, going to be the other triangles area. Mostly going to be these sphincter muscles around the anus. This is the one that also control the feces. So you can stop, for example, you can cut the feces by contracting this external anal sphincter. The same thing with the male. It's very similar. It's going to be the urogenital triangles. External urethral sphincter, you cannot see it because this is inside the penis. There is a urethra, and at the top of the urethra opening, there is external urethral sphincter muscle. Ischiocavernicus is going to be the same. Okay, ischiocavernosus muscles going to be the same here, and the bulbo is over here. Bulbospongiasis muscle. So that's top triangle, and the bottom one is going to be here the same. It's going to be this sphincter anal muscle. Okay, so external anal sphincter muscle. The muscle that move the arms, I think we already mentioned some of them already. The biggest one here, the pec muscle, the pectoralis muscle, and latissimus dorsi on the back. This is latissimus dorsi. This is number 2. This is number 1, pec muscle. Deltoid is going to be this one, number 3, deltoid muscle. Okay. Supraspinatus muscle. We can see from the back over here. Okay, so supraspinatus muscle, this is number 4. Infraspinatus muscle, this is going to be number 5 muscles over here. Suprascapularis, okay, the top of the scapula muscles. Okay, scapula is these muscles. And then it's going to be difficult to see the suprascapularis, teres major and teres minor. So this is teres major over here, and this is the teres minor muscle. So these muscles, and with other muscle, of course, will move our arms. Okay, elbow muscles, the one that flex the muscles. The elbow will be 2, bicep brachialis and brachialis. Okay, bicep brachii and brachialis. And again, this is what we call the synergistic muscle. Muscle, 2 muscles that work together. Okay, so synergistic muscles, bicep brachii and brachialis. So if you see this bicep muscles over here, it has 2 origins. This is the first origin, and this is the second origin. Therefore, it's called the biceps, 2 origins, and 1 insertions over here. So 2 origin bicep. The brachialis muscles is this one over here on the side. Okay, so these 2 muscles will flex the elbow. The one that extends the elbow is going to be on the back. Okay, so there are also 2. The first one is tricep brachii, and the name is going to be 3 origin. You see this muscle, this is tricep over here. There are 3 origins, 1, 2. The other one you cannot really see it, is blocked by this picture. So there are the other ones over here. So there it's coming from 3 origins, tricep, and all of them go to the same insertions over here. The second one is unconeus, is actually in the lower arms. This is the unconeus. And again, both of these muscles will be synergistic muscle that work together to extend the elbow. Okay, if we cut cross section of this upper arm, then you should be able to see these features over here. Okay, this is on the back. This is on the back, and this is at front. You see at front, these two over here is actually one muscle. It's called the bicep. It has two because it has two origins. On the back over here, you're gonna see three. So this is actually one muscle. It's called the tricep. It has three origins. The other one over here on the front, this is the brachialis muscle. Okay, so this is how the compartment of the upper arms look like, the meat of the muscle look like. The muscle that pronate and flex the finger or the wrist, okay, pronates our arm. Okay, so prone, and remember prone and supine position. Okay? Prone versus supine. Okay, so when you look your hand, usually you look to your hand and you see these palms over here. If you see your palm, okay, so this position is called the supine. So you are in supine position when you are able to see your palm. But if you look your hand, okay, like this, and you see the dorsal or the other side of your palm, you cannot see your palm. So this position is called prone. Okay, so when you see back of your hand, you are actually seeing the prone position. Okay, just remember that first. Okay, so the one that pronate, okay, this means that the muscle that will twist your arm from supine, okay, from supine position to prone position. Okay, this is what we call the pronate. Okay, it will prone your arms. Okay? The muscle will be located in the supine area. Okay? It's going to be in the supine area. So the muscle is actually located on the area when you're able to see your palms. Okay? So when you contract this muscle, it will twist your supine position into this prone position. Okay? You're twisting your arms from looking to your palms, then you twist it, now you see your back of your palm. So that movement is called the pronation. Pronation. And the muscle is called pronator. So this is actually muscle that located here. So this is palm area. This is your palm, okay? So this is the pronator muscles. At the same time, this muscle over here on the palm area is actually able to use for flexing your wrist and finger. So like for example, if you make a fist, if you fist your finger, like you want to hit someone, you make fist your finger. This is actually done by these muscles on your supine area of your arm, and all of this muscle is called the flexor muscle, right? So this is the muscle that pronate and flex, okay? Pronate our arm and flex our wrist and finger. On the other side, so if you like, if you look at your hand, you don't see your palm, you're gonna see back of your palm. You are in prone position. So this is prone area, right? So this prone muscle can be used to twist your arm into supine position. The movement is called the supination, and the muscle is going to be called the supinator. And this supinator will be located on the prone side of your arm. This muscle can also use to extend your finger and wrist. So when you open your finger up from fist position, for example, you open it up, and that one is called the extension. You can even doing it more than extension. You can move your fingers away more than 180 degrees. That's gonna be hyperextension. Okay, hyperextension. And this is gonna be done by the muscles that located in your prone area over here. And this one is called the extensor muscles. Okay, now retinaculum. What is retinaculum? This is a tough connective tissue band. This is like band like this. Bands like this that connect the tendon from many directions of our muscles in our fingers, palms, and lower arm area. There is a band of this connective tissue or tendon, and this band is called the retinaculum. It's going to be two areas, two retinaculum. If you look at your finger palm, if you're able to see your palm, and you just imagine that you don't see the skin over there. If you take out all the skin on the wrist area, then you will find the retinaculum. And the retinaculum is called the flexor retinaculum on the palm area. What is its flexor? Because this retinaculum actually join or holds the muscle that able to flex your finger. Like you make a fist if you want to hit someone, that's actually flexing your finger. And it is, all of this tendon going to the same retinaculum is called the flexor retinaculum. On the other side, if you look at your hand and you see the back of your palm, then under that skin on the wrist, there will be another retinaculum. It's called the extensor retinaculum, because this retinaculum will hold the muscle that able to flex, extend your finger over here, open your finger over here. So extensor retinaculum on the back, flexor retinaculums on the palm side. This is just showing us some movement that we can move with our finger, like flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, oppositions, and etc. They're all going to the retinaculum done by muscles, whether extensor or flexor muscle. Muscle that move vertebrae, so we can move our vertebrae, we can bend our body, or we can bend left or right to our body because of this group of muscles. So the first one is spinalis muscle, and the name is telling you this is connecting the vertebrae to another vertebrae. If you see this is, let's say this is vertebrae, okay, like this. Okay. This is another vertebrae, for example, like this. This is the sharp area of the vertebrae over here. So this one over here is called the spine of the vertebrae process. Okay, so the muscle actually connects the spine with another spine. Therefore, it's called the spinalis muscle. So this one over here is the spinalis muscle. The second muscle is called the iliocostalis. I'm sorry, this would be S over here. Costalis. Coste means ribs. Okay, so it's gonna be located on the one that connect the ribs with another ribs with maybe hip bone. So this is iliocostalis. So this is number 2 group of muscles on the back. And the last one is longissimus. This is long muscle from the top to the bottom. So this is the longissimus muscle. So these 3 group of muscle make us able to move our back a little bit, bend our back left and right, back and forth, up and down. So this is the 3 group of muscle that perform these types of actions. Muscle that crossing the hip joint. There are several groups. Iliopsoas, this is in this area over here. This is consists of psoas muscles and the iliacus muscle. So the iliopsoas. The second group is, of course, the quadriceps femoris, the muscle in the front and side, lateral side of our thigh. All of them is called the quadriceps femoris. There are 4 muscles: rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, vastus intermedius, and vastus medialis. So these are the groups of quadriceps femoris muscle, 4 of them. And then adductor muscle, of course, going to be in the middle area, in the groin area over here. Consists of pectineus, adductor, and gracilis muscle. So this is the one that perform adductions. Sometimes someone have a pull groin muscle. This is usually stretching of these iliopsoas muscles and the adductor muscle. You can feel pain inside the groin area, around the groin area. Muscles of the buttock and the thigh, the back thigh, on the back. So it's going to be gluteal muscles. Consists of maximus, medius, and minimus. So this is maximus being cut, then medius a little bit on the top, and gluteus minimus, you only see it when the maximus is being cut. So this is the 3 gluteal muscle. Hamstring, this is muscles on the back of your thigh. Consists of semimembranous, semitendinous, and bicep femoris. So all of this muscle over here in the same group is called the hamstring muscle. And again, some people have what we call the pull hamstring. This is actually happening in this group of muscles. Pain on the back of our thigh. And so again, this is the gluteus maximus. And it's going to be medius on the top. This is also site for injection. And then if we cut the maximus, then the minimus will be exposed. Okay, if we cut cross sections through the thigh, then there will be 3 main compartments. So when we cut this thigh over here, cross section, you're going to see 3 compartment group of muscle. So this is the front and side. The front and side, you're going to see this quadriceps femoris. Going to be consists of 4 muscles, right? And inside, in the middle, you're going to see the adductor muscles. So this is group of adductor muscles. This is adductor muscle. This is quadriceps femoris. Okay. And on the backs, you're gonna see this hamstrings muscle. Hamstring. Okay, so these are the 3 compartments of muscle groups in the thigh. Muscle on the calf, on the back of our legs. The biggest one is this, gonna be gastrocnemius. Gastro means belly. Okay, so belly. So if you see the muscle, it just look like a belly. Sometimes some people have a very big muscles over here. It's just like a big stomach, big belly. Okay, so that's gastrocnemius. There is a plantaris muscles over here. The plantaris muscle, soleus muscle. So in the side over here. Tibialis posteriors in the back, flexor digitorum. So all of this muscle, we're gonna flex the digit or the toes. Mostly it's called the plantar flexion because it's going down. So plantar flexion. Okay, same thing with this flexor hallucis. This is usually for big and little toe. So this is also performing flexion, plantar flexion. And the front, the big one is going to be over here, the tibialis anterior. And this is the one that performs the dorsiflexions, moving your foot to the top. It's called the dorsiflexion. This can also inverse your ankle, inversion, extensor and extensor hallucis. So this is also the muscle that will perform some flexion or extensions in this finger or toes. Shin split syndrome, this is usually soreness in the tibialis anterior muscles. Okay, plantar foot, so this group of muscles over here that able to move our toes. And the group that moving the little toes is called the digiti dimini. And the hallucis group is the one that will control the movement of the big toe. So this is hallucis muscle. Pendule in the heel area, this is plantar fasciitis. Sometimes you feel that. Feeling really pains on the plantar area, especially if you don't wear a very good type of shoes. It might causing this plantar fasciitis. Okay, the last one is the IM, intramuscular injection. In general, there are 3 muscles that use for site for injection. The first one is gluteus medius. This is actually part of the quadriceps femoris muscles. So this is the first site for injection. The second one is vastus lateralis, which is part of the gluteal muscles. I'm sorry. The first one is gluteus medius. It's going to be part of the gluteal muscle over here. Okay, butt muscle, buttock muscle. Vastus lateralis, it's going to be this one, which is part of the quadriceps femoris muscle. And the deltoid, yeah, the shoulder muscle. Okay. Okay, this is the shoulder area over here. This is the three main part for the intramuscular injection. Intramuscular injection is actually very good because it's gonna be, it will be able to deliver the medicines, okay, the chemicals faster than oral tablet or pills. However, it is less effective if compared to the IV. But IV is gonna be very difficult. Yeah? Nobody wants to get IV over and over, but they say okay for injection. Of course, the most convenient one is using the oral medicines, but it's sometimes not that effective. So usually this IM injection is very good, effective way to put the medicine inside into our body, just like vaccination, flu shot, for example, diabetes injections, insulin injection is using this type of injection too. I think that's all for this chapter. I see you again on the next chapter. Goodbye now.